Older generations throughout history have been complaining about their youth's shortcomings for centuries. Dating all the way back past 400 BC, Greek philosopher Aristotle referenced the youth of his day, saying, "Their lives are regulated more by feeling than by reasoning. All their mistakes are in the direction of doing things excessively and vehemently." That was 400 BC. Peter Hermit, a key figure in the First Crusade. The young people of today think of nothing but themselves. Hesiod, a Greek poet from 8th century BC, "I see no hope for the future of our people if they are dependent on frivolous youth of today, for certainly all youth are reckless beyond words." Millennials are no exception to this trend. Accredited media outlets such as Time Magazine, USA Today, The Wall Street Journal, and Psychology Today have all published articles slighting millennials' work ethic and/or moral obligations. Narcissistic, clueless, too laid back, and noisy are some of the insults mainstream media has slung the upcoming generation's way. Any of them sound familiar? One article in particular caught my attention. In March of 2014, the National Review posted an article that reads as follows. Take marriage. Only 26% of millennials are married, a record low for their age group. By contrast, back in 1980, when they were the age that millennials are now, 48% of baby boomers were married. The millennial retreat from marriage is particularly worrisome because it hasn't stopped many of them from having children. In 2012, 47% of births to millennial women took place outside the marriage, a troubling trend because such children are more likely to end up in single-parent families that put them at a higher risk for educational failure, poverty, and emotional distress. This is a modern grievance addressed specifically to the youth of today. How does society as a whole approach marriage differently today than they have in the past? Could changes to marriage culture actually be having a positive impact? Or is the next generation as doomed as they say? Pennsylvania couples married for over 50 years weigh in on the debacle.
Yeah, you guys put it off for a while now.
Yeah,
Test things out
different.
first and everything. You
Women
didn't
have
do
a
that when we
chance
were young.
to get out and have a career or things like that, you know, which I never even thought of having a career. That didn't interest me at all.
We're a mobile society now. Years ago, people would grow up in the same area, they would have jobs in the same town, and the family would kind of live, in Gene's case, his family lived right around the same neighborhoods.
The reason that people in those days stayed together and didn't get divorced or anything, because they learned to put up with all the crap. I was in a company for years and years and years, and many people in our day, they worked for a company. They had company cities, and they would work in that one company all their life and never thought of moving to another company or doing a different job or something. And that's just, it amazes me today how people jump around to everything, and they move all over the place and travel. We didn't do that in our day.
Friday and Saturday night in downtown Shippensburg, the square, right around the square, people would pull in their cars, the farmers would come to town, the townspeople would come down in their cars and stuff, and mingle for hours.
People
Guy
don't do that.
down there has a peanut machine, Jimmy Billy's would roast peanuts, you just stand there and just talk, and you knew majority, you knew 80% of the people around Shippensburg. Today, it's hard to even know your neighbor.
We were raised in a different time.
Yeah.
It was a good time, you know. Today there's so many problems for your age that you have to go through that we never had to go through.
Well,
As the cliche goes, the older the wiser. So are we in as much trouble as they say? Are the good old days truly behind us? Professional marriage counselor Dr. Michael Lind discusses how the changes to society's culture have affected his line of work.
The roles have changed. I mean, expectations for marriage have definitely changed. People are marrying later. So the statistics show that back years ago, the generation of the baby boomers and then, you know, their children were marrying still around 20 to 25 was the average age. Now it's changed quite a bit. Most people are waiting until they're closer to 30, maybe even older, to get married and then to have children. It may even be your mid-30s, your 30s, early 30s to mid-30s. So that's a lot of time where people are focusing more on themselves. They're really trying to establish their own careers. You have people that are more interested in having fun, doing things with friends. Then all of a sudden you get married to someone, and now you're expected to share just about everything and share a life with someone else. So it is different now than it was back then. And those older generations too, roles were a little bit more defined. So you were still in that age before feminism where it was much more expected that the woman would be one way and the man would be one way. Now we're in a generation where, you know, you can be really what you want to be, and it doesn't always come together well when people get married, and learning how to share responsibilities and what their role is. So it affects expectations.
That's surprising, because wouldn't you think that if you're waiting longer to get married, not rushing into it young, that it would be more likely to last?
Yes, and certainly there's one good thing that I'm seeing, and that is that there's never been more research out there and never been more books on marriage. So you're seeing that there's definitely a split now. So for example, there are, I think, healthier marriages than there's ever been before. So you have one population that's out there. Sadly, it's probably about 20%, but there is about a 20% population that's very, very healthy, and they did wait a very long time. They found the perfect person for them.
The data can be analyzed multiple ways. One way to look at things is that divorce rates in Pennsylvania have been on a slight decline for the past 4 years. Another way to look at the data is that while the divorce rate is currently on a decline, it has still more than doubled what it was in the 50s and 60s, and with a population increase of over 1 million. Women's Studies professor Dr. Becky Ward gives insight into why this could be.
The effects of divorce are mediated by income. So when you look at the divorce rates and who gets custody of children, for example, it's generally women. About 85 to 90% of custody goes to women, although there is an increase in joint custody. And women make less than men. And so women are more likely to be in poverty, and as a result, children are more likely to be in poverty. In fact, about 1 in 5 children lives in poverty. Some of that is related to divorce, but again, it depends on the reason for the divorce. Again, it's much harder for children if they're living in a high conflict home. And women and men didn't have the choice to get out of those before. There were a lot of legislative reasons why you couldn't. It might take you longer to get divorced if there was no fault divorce. So there's a lot of reasons for why that happens.
A no-fault divorce allows couples to legally file for divorce without claiming a reason. No-fault divorces weren't implemented in Pennsylvania until 1979, and divorce had already been on the rise 20 years prior. While legalizing no-fault divorce could be a contributing factor to the increase in divorces, a deeper cultural change begs meaning toward the cause. We go back to Michael Lynn for more answers.
As roles have changed for both men and women, and you have many more women now too that are, you look back at the older generations, there weren't as many women that went to college. The wage gap was more significant, so women were unable to earn as much as men. Now you have definitely more equality, and you have people that are willing to not stay in relationships as much, which in some ways is a good thing. Those statistics back 50 years ago, there was a lot of marriages that were very, very unhealthy. There was a lot of people that were in abusive relationships. There was a lot of people that were in relationships that probably shouldn't have stayed together, but they felt they had to stay together.
Dr. Becky Ward explains how feminism and women's equality can have such a powerful impact.
Women's and gender studies is about intersectionality. And so when you talk about gender, women and gender, you can't really talk about that without talking about a lot of other things, because it influences everything.
One of our senior citizens from earlier would have to agree that feminism has definitely influenced marriage culture in a big way, but not for the better.
What is it leading to the disintegration of the world? Men and women not joining together and forming family units. And the family, of course, is what we were made to be, a family with God. And now we aren't. In fact, divorce and things and remarrying and all that stuff is so
Sad,
easily done.
very sad.
And part of women becoming independent themselves, I think, has caused that.
A family with God, he says. That stuck with me. In fact, religion was a hot topic amongst all couples married 50-plus years that I had spoken with.
We're part of the body of Christ. We don't belong to a church.
Do you think that that's helped in your marriage?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Oh, yes, much.
It's one of the only reasons that we would stay together, or did stay together, I think.
Church should be very important to every marriage. Well, everybody in general, I think, but
How do you think it's helped your marriage?
definitely.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It builds character and it builds.
We go to church, like I say, Sunday morning, Sunday night, come Sunday night, and we don't go. That we don't seem like it goes right, because our pastor does preach right out of the Bible, and about the coming of the Lord, he does.
The sanctity of marriage has changed in modern society.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. And I think a lot of it is caused by our school systems no longer really giving the proper discipline, no longer exposing students to the Bible. It's not necessarily forcing them to do that, but being exposed to it is a help.
Yeah.
To get to the bottom of religious influence on marriage, I went to Jan Bai, an ordained pastor for 32 years. Bai talks about why having a strong faith can solidify a resilient marriage.
When that is tied into their life and their marriage, they're not just making a commitment to each other. They're committing themselves to embody in their marriage the values, the love, the grace, the forgiveness, the trust that are embodied in their faith, and that can help.
There are many forms of religion. Even within one faith, there can be many different sectors. Christianity is embodied in both Pastor Bai's Methodist ministry as well as Father Dwight's Catholic priesthood. Father Dwight believes that Christianity can have a unique influence on a marriage's unity.
Well, first of all, it respects marriage, and it values it and appreciates and cherishes it for what it really is, which is not the case necessarily outside of Christianity. The Christian faith brings to it a strong sense of commitment because of what Jesus taught about marriage. Like that you realize as a Christian, when you go into marriage, you're going in there understanding that this is for life. This is until death do us part. It's not, you can't go in and say, well, I'm going to marry you until I get tired of you, or I was at a marriage ceremony where the words "till death do us part" were not in there, so it was kind of like a marriage of convenience. Where Christianity is different from that. It's like, no, this is a lifelong commitment. This is a real commitment. It's not a temporary, like whatever I want kind of thing.
Another hot topic among senior citizens is technology. While they never had to worry about online dating and social media influencing their relationships, modern couples do. Michael Lynn has more.
It is so easy now to connect with people through social media that you're often very disconnected from your spouse. And it's vitally important that you spend 20 to 30 minutes minimum a day of just being with your partner. Too often couples are coming home from work, or if one person's working and maybe the other spouse is staying home and taking care of children, taking care of the house, what they're doing is they're spending most of their day online. And then they come home and they're still doing the same thing. They're laying in bed at night doing the same thing instead of hanging out with each other. And it opens up all kinds of opportunities to connect with previous people that you used to know, previous people you used to date. So we're seeing a definite increase in affairs, and the access to it is a lot easier because of social media.
It's quite obvious that things are different now than they were back then. While marriage rates aren't nearly as high as they were back in the 50s and 60s, the last 2 years have produced some of the highest number of marriages per year since 2005. The bottom line is that society's way of life is ever-changing. New times call for a new culture. To claim one generation's ways are better than another's may not be entirely accurate. Because how can they be compared? Generations adapt to situational circumstances of their environments. Instead of declaring one to be better or worse, we have the option to instead simply accept them as different. At the end of the day, divorce and marriage aside, love has stayed the same.
Pretty young, you know, 18 and 20.
We were mushheads when we got married.
We were what?
Mushheads, still. Oh, we were.
You were, honey, I wasn't.
Yes, you were. You didn't know what you were getting into.
Mary's sister and her husband lived right across the street. And I think she had her eye on me.
Yeah,
She seen me going to school and coming back and
I
forth.
saw him coming out, getting in the vehicle, and wouldn't start. They had to push it and jump in the car. I never forgot that.
But those are the good old days, really. They were.
We love each other. That's the most important part.
Yeah.
What do you accredit your long marriage to?
Love,
Love?
absolutely.
It's just been a good union, you know.
We both like the same things.
You love somebody when you get married, or when you meet somebody and you fall in love. You have one kind of love, and as you grow up and as you go on and you have a family, your love changes a little and it's a different kind of a love. It becomes deeper, but it's a different kind of a love. And then as you get old like we are, our love has changed again. But I think it's kind of like it was when we were first starting out. It's a really deep commitment and love. So
The most important part also is that you really love each other. Don't marry somebody if you don't really love them, because it won't last. And you can see that.
And love is only a feeling.